Welcome to the Engineering Emotions and Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Wink. Here we are trying to help people be more relaxed, more energetic, and live a heartfelt life. On today's show, we got a fantastic guest, Derek Loudermilk. He's a professional adventurer, best-selling author, speaker, digital nomad, business coach, father, founder of AdventureQuest Travel, and the host of the Adventure Podcast. And he also has the Derek Loudermilk podcast as well. He is committed to helping people make their lives the most amazing adventure possible. After getting fired from numerous jobs, dropping out of a Ph.D. program, recovering from a failed marriage, he realized he had been living someone else's dream. He set out to construct a career and lifestyle that would let him be the explorer and teacher that he was always meant to be. He asked, "What does it look like to be the hero of your own life?" And in the past 7 years, he has been doing a lot of heroic things. I'm not going to touch on all of them. I'm just going to go to one of the more recent big things. He's got his first solo book out called Superconductors, Revolutionize Your Career and Make Big Things Happen. It's available on Amazon. And one of my personal favorites, Audible. I listen to way more books now than I actually read.
Yep.
So welcome to the show, Derek Loudermilk. Hey, Derek.
Justin. Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah. So I know we said we wanted to talk consciousness and 3D reality, and I think we will, but I did kind of want to poke into your PhD program, because I went the whole way through and got my PhD in electrical engineering, and I don't recommend it to most people. Lots of people are like, oh, my kid's thinking of getting one, or I'm thinking of getting a PhD, and I'm like, what's wrong? Why are they so unhappy? Like, they want to talk to me. Maybe we can work some stuff out. Like, it's very few well-balanced, happy people get into PhD programs. This is kind of what I found.
And this is one of those things where, like, do you actually know what it's like to be in a PhD program? Like, maybe you should try to really understand that, because I had this vision of what I thought it was going to be like. And I was going to be working in the field in Yellowstone National Park and taking samples in the hot springs and snowmobiling through herds of bison. And that happened, except that it was only, 2 days out of the year. And the rest of the time I was trying to teach myself programming and bioinformatics, or spending 12 hours in a dark microscope room, or, whatever it was. And there were certain aspects that were really amazing. The experimental design, I really loved. Teaching undergrads, I really loved that. And those are things that I've brought forward into my career. But there was that all the time by yourself, spending 2 years before you can publish anything, realizing that my professor, my mentor, was one of the best in the world at what he does. He's the first person to create synthetic life forms using, he created the first synthetic virus, and he was barely able to get funded. And so the amount of competition for doing good basic research was, there's no profit motive for just simply learning about some of these things. And I was studying, the beginnings of life. Where does life come from? How does it originate out of, the soup of the frothy early oceans? And so we were looking at viruses because they're the simplest life forms.
Right.
And, really, I could just see the writing on the wall in terms of impact. Like, what impact would I really be having as a basic researcher and this, like, sort of far out field of microbiology, extreme microbiology? And what were the economic prospects? Could I really become wealthy and influential as when I'm sort of bound by competing against hundreds of amazing other researchers for a small pool of money? So I had to pivot, and that was the time in my life when I sort of, not only did I drop out of my PhD program, but that was the same year that I lost my house in a flood. I had a traumatic brain injury at the same time, and I got divorced all in the same year. And so basically lost everything all at once, and started over.
Wow. And that was that like in 2013 when?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's sounding almost like my most recent year, because that's like I stepped away from my tech job. I've been on leave since November. I then realized that my marriage was not really working out well. So I'm in the middle of getting divorced, and so she moved out pretty much immediately. And so like, I'm in this big 5-bedroom house. And so what the hell do I do? I don't want to live in this giant house. So I'm renting out my house. So this is like actually my last week in my house before I start renting it out.
Oh,
And I'm going to go
wow.
travel around. So it is one of those, like, it's a lot of stuff.
Are you going to be a
And
nomad?
I'm going to be a little bit of a nomad. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to
Exciting.
learn how that is because I've always been someone like, oh, I want like my home base, this, and it's going to be different. And I'm ready for different because, yeah, like in your bio where it's just like you've been living somebody else's life. I'd look back and it's like, yeah, I did all the things that everyone else would have wanted me to do, but what did I actually want to do? Um,
And sometimes it's really hard to tell if it's your idea or someone else's. Like if you think like, I have a great idea, I'm going to go get a PhD or I'm going to go do a career. How do you know whether that's yours or whether that's programmed to you, that you picked up somewhere along the way before you even had a time to sort of think about it? And that's really what happened to me. It was I just always assumed I'm going to be a scientist.
mm-hmm.
But I picked that up from somewhere as a young kid, and it partly because everyone was always telling me, "You're really good at science. You're really good at math. Keep going." And so then you start going down this script, this flow, and all the pieces flow naturally until they don't. Until you realize you're like, I'm just sort of ambivalent about this, even though I'm really good at it, and it's okay. See, I think a lot of people get caught up in like, I'm either highly trained, I've got sunk costs, or I'm naturally gifted in this thing, and all those, you have all these reasons that make sense, except you just don't want to do it.
Yeah. Oh, no big deal, except that there's no joy in it. There's no love of it. The more you achieve, the emptier it almost starts to become. And
that's why I ended up getting married in the first place. It wasn't because I was like, I really wanted to get married. It was because my girlfriend,
mm-hmm.
she wanted to get married, and I was like, oh, well, I kind of like being with you, and I think that'll make you happy. So, and also, how much can you really know about yourself if you've never been married? So I was like, well, let's just give it a shot. Which isn't actually a great reason to do it.
That is about pretty much the same reason I gave to the couples therapist when we started couples therapy. Why did you get married? And it was about like, I don't know, she really wanted to, and I wanted to try. I wanted to ride the ride. I didn't want to be afraid to step on the marriage carousel. And in retrospect, probably not the greatest, with the. But hey, it's it was an experience and learned, and luckily it's going really well because we're both pretty good communicators about it. And
that's great. A lot of similarities here.
Yeah. So I guess leading to the topic a little bit of, so at what point did you actually get to that? Well, okay, I sound like the universe kind of said, hey, Derek, none of this stuff is working. Knock it off. How was your process to kind of go like, okay, there's got to be something else? Because it seems like you're definitely on your path of doing what you want. And I mean, maybe, I don't think you ever finish what you want. It's just you do one thing and then you realize you want to do another thing. I think that's the ride of life. But how was it to actually getting sort of beyond that loss, which some people never recover from? And, and since you've turned that into basically an amazing growth opportunity, not for yourself, but for others with, your book and your coaching and your podcast, like,
there's two things I'll say about that. One was the brain injury. This is a freak blood clot in my brain that we don't know how it happened. And it's, less than 1 in a million people actually. It's a very rare random occurrence. But it made me sort of think about mortality and all of these things and the shortness of life. And that sort of, I think we're all sort of aware, like, oh, our time is limited, but it feels like we have forever. And then when they call you and they're like, come to the hospital immediately, like you could die, you need to get here and we need to inject you with some blood thinners, et cetera.
Yeah. And
then you're like, okay, is what I'm doing the rest of today, the rest of the week, what I really want to be doing? If I die in the next 3 months, is there stuff still left unfinished? Do I need to say, do I need to express myself to people, express my love to my family, or do I need to do something really exciting or have a big party or jump off out of an airplane or what is it, So you ask yourself those questions. And there were parts of my life that I was already loving. And there were parts where like, if you chose your last day, like I'm not going to spend 12 hours trying to learn to program on my last day. Like it wasn't exciting for me. And
that's computer science. For those of you considering computer science, it's just programming. It's not. Yeah, there's a lot of people that sign up for that major and they don't know that. Oh, it's just trying to code all day.
Yeah. And for some reason, this was one of those situations where they're like, bioinformatics is going to give you the best sort of cross section between understanding biology and managing lots of data, and if you learn bioinformatics, you'll have a great career. And I was like, sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, it was such a hot area. Yeah, at that time, I remember around that time and hearing about, oh, this is the hot thing. Got it. Like machine learning and AI is, right now. Like it's like, get into that.
And so I was like, okay, got to learn Python and all this stuff. It's just so really hard for me.
So you got the clarity that that's not how you would spend your time. That's out.
And that intersected with reading 4-Hour Workweek. And it wasn't so much that it was, I just stole his ideas, which I did, but it was that it was a different frame of thinking about how to create autonomy for yourself, because I had already been starting to think about business. I was selling people's old sports equipment on eBay. I was coaching cyclists. I was already dipping my toe into entrepreneurship, but that book sort of said to me in a way, you can just do whatever you want. There is a way to make a living doing exactly what you want to be doing. You just have to figure out the details. And that was a big shift for me. And so I moved out of my PhD program. I said, I need to find a really cheap place, which was Southeast Asia. Vietnam was the first place I went. And I started with 4 clients, cycling coaching clients, paying me $250 a month, $1,000 total. And I projected my cost of living was going to be about $800 a month. Mm-hmm. So basically I had an infinite runway to experiment and explore and figure out business in a broader sense.
Yeah. I think that's such a great example of once you kind of know what you want and you allow yourself, and then just you ask the question, well, how do I make it happen? Whereas usually it's just like, well, I am where I am and I can only see maybe one step away from where I am. And it's just like, that's so limiting, because moving to another country is a game changer for almost any, in a lot of ways, for a lot of reasons, and especially from the cost of living standpoint. So I think that's like super cool.
Yeah. And anytime you just sort of plop down in a new place, the systems that you move through in the world, how do you get your food, how you pay for things, how do you talk to people, it's just so different that it sort of cracks open your neural connections and forces you to make all these new connections. It just shakes the whole snow globe. It's like travel is like psychedelics. It just shifts everything and lets you reform new patterns, ways of thinking, and all of a sudden you're more creative and you just figure out solutions that maybe even weren't available before.
Yeah, because in some ways you're creative problem solving all the time because so many things are different. You have to adapt, like you said, even for the most mundane things, buying groceries. It's like I remember I lived in Germany for 6 months, right when I got out of graduate school. And like, even just like the system for buying bananas was different. Like, I think I was supposed to have weighed the bananas and put a price tag on it before I went to the checker. And so I just showed up with bananas, and the checker, in German was very upset. Yes, what are you doing? You've got bananas without the sticker? Like, I don't know. I'm American. I'm sorry. But then I learned, and it was not the end of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're talking a little bit about the interplay between when you're doing new things and having new experiences, and it's building new pathways in your mind. That's also a sort of the opposite of productivity and efficiency. And like, if you want to build a habit and if you want to get a lot of creative output done, right? If you've got a career, and this is a challenge of a lot of digital nomads, is how to be highly productive with what really matters, and at the same time be having a whole slew of new experiences, because they're sort of oppositional, and you sort of have to have times when you're just way out there being adventurous and not being productive at all, but shaking up your worldview, and then come back to a place where you're just like, for me, I'm almost hermit for a while. My output goes way up and nobody hears from me for weeks at a time.
Feeling overwhelmed by the daily grind? Imagine if you could pause, reset, and truly connect with a calmer, more fulfilled you. It's not just a dream, it's absolutely possible. Hi, I'm Justin, and I invite you to discover the life-changing techniques in my book, Engineered to Love. Right now, I'm offering a free chapter complete with guided audios that have already helped so many people find peace amidst the chaos. These aren't just any techniques. They're transformative practices designed to help you love yourself and engage deeply with the present moment, without even having to close your eyes to the world around you. So join us at engineeredtolove.com/sample and access your free guided session. It's time to bust the busyness and embrace the joy, ease, and love in your everyday life. Don't wait. Start your journey to a more relaxed and recharged you today, because you deserve to live a life you love. Visit engineeredtolove.com/sample. See you there.
Yeah, that's something I've started to sort of play around with and I think we're all different on that. Yeah, how much can you be go, go, go versus how much do we need that like rest and relaxation? And I think I'm now getting more comfortable that like, yeah, for me, it might be, I need to, because I went on a men's yoga camp for 3 days, and it was just, I was, talking to people and loving it. And then I got home and I'm done. I'm like, I just want to do nothing for like 3 days. And so I did. And then and I think sometimes we think, well, we have to be go, 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 go. And if not, there's something wrong with us, which I don't think is true at all. I think we all have a different sort of set point balance that lets us be our best in different ways.
Well, here's what's fascinating to me is how we as a capitalistic society have tied productive value to individual worth. Like you are a valuable member of society if you're contributing. And when you force people to not work because of lockdowns and shutdowns and things, all of a sudden people see for the first time that they're valuable as a person, as a soul, regardless of their economic output. And they can just spend time being who they are, which is, I think, perhaps one of the greatest gifts of a lockdown or a pandemic, is that there's a chance for people to see like their own true nature separated from economic output.
Yeah. And I think it just, cracked open this whole, you have to do something to get money. And I think a lot of people finally got that taste of money, sort of a magical, weird thing that is not necessarily tied to, I do this many hours and I get this amount. That there's a whole world of and wealthy people have known it for ages, but I think now more and more people have gotten it. And I think that'll end up being a good thing. Like, I don't know, when I became a homeowner 5 years ago, and then that magic to be able to like, I can refi and cash out, and magically I have tens of thousands of extra dollars. Why? Because a magic number that somebody set, the Federal Reserve changed, and poof, because it can. And there's really, I didn't do anymore. It really is. And then, you can just focus on, well, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to interact with? As opposed to that really machine-like transaction way that our whole economy and society has been set up for, what is it, a couple hundred years now. And it's not going to be necessary anymore with basically 3D printing and AI. And what do people need to do in 20 years? We're not going to need to do anything. It's just a matter of time, I believe.
And one of the things, we're talking about abundance, once you realize that, money is just part of abundance. And a definition I like to work with is being able to do what you need to do when you need to do it.
Yeah, I love
and
that
so,
definition.
So money is very helpful, but it's very limited in terms of doing what you need to do. And I really like thinking about training luck. How, like, if instead of money, you just had everything fall into place for you, you can't even imagine your good luck to get a house, a car, a job, the right connections, a romantic thing. If it was all just really good luck, is that possible to train? Is it possible to train the synchronicities that lead to you, just loving everything? And I think partly in a way, you can be looking for it, right? Like when you know the right connections to make, when you know where you want to go and how you want to feel and all these things, then you're looking for, if you expect to be lucky, right? Then you can see the pieces falling into place even as it's happening. And someone who's just looking for money to do what they need to do, they're going to miss all the connections. But you also have to be well trained and well educated to be able to put the pieces together, right? If you're like me, trying to discover a new species, well, you have to have enough knowledge to know where to look and how to find it and how to know if it's a new species and all these things. But then once I set out, it was actually quite easy to, good luck, to actually find it. And I think that can happen in so many ways when you stop focusing on money as your sources of abundance, but somebody could just give you something, right? Gifts.
Oh yeah.
Exchange, barter, good luck. There's so many different avenues to get a thing. If you, like we just went shopping for a new car, we're going to buy it with money.
Right.
But people offered us new cars before we decided to use money. Right. So we could have just taken the gift, but we decided to use money instead.
Because I'm guessing maybe you prefer a different type of vehicle or whatever. And...
Yeah, exactly. We want a van. I have a family. I love to carry a lot of toys. So
yeah. Because some people get into the sort of the manifesting world of I can just luck things, so I'll just sit around and not leave the house. And but there is, like, as you're mentioning, there's a element of like effort and intelligence and discernment. It's not, you don't throw the logical mind completely in the trash, but you don't want to be a master. You don't want to be a slave to the logical mind either, which is such a trap kind of in our traditional way of, how to be successful is, you be really smart and then do all the smart things, which usually ends up to ridiculous amounts of unhappiness and body, damage to the body, disease, whatever type of things. And
there's a certain amount of both unlearning the rational way and really having to have trust that the new way is going to work out for you. And you just kind of got to do it a few times to really build that trust. But an example is we were shopping for this van, and we logically, rationally, we wanted a plug-in hybrid. And there's only one company, that's Chrysler, making a plug-in hybrid van. And every time we went to look at it, it just wasn't doing it for us. And we were like, yeah, but it's the plug-in hybrid and it's really great. And it's the only one, it's rated highly. There's a lot of good reasons for it, but we didn't want it. And we did want this, this other van, which is slightly older, hybrid technology, but it's the Toyota. And we both kept looking at Toyotas and being like, we like these. We really like it. It feels good. And, then we realized, well, we could get it in emerald green. Oh, cool. We both want this color. This is kind of like rare and wild. And so here you've got this, a list of pros and cons, or a list of reasons why you should do one thing. But if you don't want to do it, and there is another thing that you really want to do, can you trust that that's actually the right choice? That the thing that's lighting you up and filling you with, like, I really want to be in a future where I own this vehicle, or I want to have it this way just because it feels great, that's good information. And you might not know all the reasons why it's lighting you up so much, but you have to trust that your feelings are as right or much more right than your reasons.
Yeah, that's so, to just, you don't need a reason. It kind of just it is. Which in some ways that's the ultimate connection to the universe in a way, because there's a lot of things like why does a seed turn into a giant tree? It does. Like what and a botanist or whatever the science can explain at the different times, like, well, this cell's dividing and it becomes this, but the why, it does. It just does. There's not. And so, like, why did you not like that one? You didn't like that one and you like the other one. And they usually would come up with reasons, but they're like, if we get really honest with ourselves, they're usually bullshit reasons. It's filled in after the fact so that we can explain it to somebody else. But usually that's not for me. And that's that's all you need, really. And to be okay with that is such a gift, and really is the key to starting to create kind of anything, like to go, I don't want to do this type of work, and then head into whatever you want.
And there's a dynamic here that's playing out at a society level of like, right, our own freedom to choose and someone else's, there's some amount of control that's trying to be exerted over other people, because, so it's like power, control, and freedom is a sort of dynamic that's happening right now. Because if somebody is like, well, I don't, I think everyone should get the vaccine. Well, that's some amount of control. And then that butts up against someone's freedom to say, like, actually, I don't really want to get a vaccine. And then, so, and maybe they don't have a good reason. Maybe like the reasons are bullshit, but they still don't want to. And so there's an individual level here, but there's also a societal level of like, how much are we going to force people to do things, or how much are we going to allow them to have these things, even though they're like, we don't want them to choose this, right? As parents, like, I've got 2 little kids, and the times when I'm keeping them safe from a thing they want to do but is dangerous, I'm controlling them. And so really we are faced with this dynamic of, can I allow you to actually have your own free will versus how much do we need to sort of protect you for your own good?
Yeah. And I think with kids, that's a really good example, because it's sort of like, well, when you're, much younger, you don't have the capability to, do much of your own thought and self-control yet. So that's why it's really important. And then as we get older and we're in a society, there ends up being sort of that trade-off of, the social contract of various things of like, well, yeah, I'm going to give up certain freedoms, or, but, oh, look at all the benefit I get. I get, easy exchange of goods and services, and, an illusion of safety or whatever. And I think we're like running into a reevaluation of a lot of these of, what's of value to me and what am I willing to give up? And I think we're starting to kind of go, and it might be kind of interesting, because in a lot of ways, it's like nothing seems right or wrong necessarily. It's just different varying degrees of, well, how much do you want to be on the hook for everything versus how much do you want to just go treat me like a baby again?
Yeah. And I can tell you
anywhere
that
in between.
Obedient children are much easier to deal with, and obedient adults, if you get domesticated to be an obedient child, you become an obedient adult, perhaps. And does that help fix problems? Obedience really doesn't make things better. It doesn't. If we have a broken system or something that needs fixing, you need someone to have brand new ideas, brand new ways of trying to do this. And obedience really isn't that.
No, it just results in less hassle for whoever's attempting to control. Right? That's
exactly.
That's the only. Like some of these things, like loyalty and duty and obligation. It's like that. Who does that benefit? It's like doesn't benefit me to be loyal to somebody or fulfill duties. It's like somebody else made that up. It's helped somebody else not have to worry. They can just go, Justin will just do that, even though it's completely against his. It doesn't actually help him. It's probably bad for him, but we made him think that he's being loyal and he's a good little obedient.
You're reminding me of my time in Boy Scouts when they have the Scout motto, which is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. There's a lot of programming in those.
Wow.
Right there.
I'd say there's definitely some of those that I would want the traits to be, like kind. But that's kind of an interesting mix of traits that probably everyone would go like, yeah, I want that, with some ones that like, no, let's get these programmed deep in and we'll just slip these, be obedient in with. That's pretty
And
crazy.
that's a holdover from Boy Scouts were created in 1910 or so. So, right, 110 years ago. But we're still having kids recite that now. So that's a very mid-industrial era programming.
Yeah, which is now so long ago. It's like, probably should change that. Well,
yeah, I was at the 4th of July parade, and there was some military vehicles driving by, like some tanks, some maybe World War I, World War II era, motorcycles, and I just thought, like, how quaint to have cannons and little projectiles, when it's likely that the next, it's going to be cyber warfare, it's going to be chemical warfare, biological warfare, psionic warfare, space lasers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe I think now we've covered a lot of runway. I think now let's take off into consciousness and 3D reality. So I think this is one of these things where there ends up being some different, verbiage that people do, but I think it all ends up, so manifesting, I'm guessing, is, maybe one term that some people use in this space, but often can get confused. So here's your, what's your take on sort of this, the mind being able to create?
Yeah. So one that's, very easy for people to get and accept is, right, when you think negative thoughts that make you stressed, your cortisol levels go up. So there you're impacting your own biology, right? There's one system that all you have to do is think some thoughts and you're changing your physical chemistry. And there's indications for people healing themselves, for hurting themselves, for, just changing all kinds of things about their physical body. And that's sort of a good jumping off place for people to realize that their thoughts can impact the material world. But there's nearly sort of an infinite, almost anything you could imagine and beyond, and things that are beyond my comprehension as possible, because in a quantum physics-based reality, sort of anything is possible, and you probably haven't thought of all the possibilities yet.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get into just really wild stuff, and you have to sort of suspend disbelief to consider whether you may just be limiting physical reality because you aren't believing it's possible.
Yeah, because it's always interesting to read some older texts and things, not even as old as like the Bible, but even just like Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, which I'm trying to remember. I think that was written like 1940 something. But it was like his experiences in like the early 1900s, like of him performing and him witnessing what would be considered miracle, like very physical, tangible things, like getting changed, appearing, disappearing. I think there's even some story of some woman who tons of people like literally like never ate any food, like never took in any food whatsoever, and she lived for and it's like I think that people then just were open-minded to it, so they were able to see it, whereas most of us, we know what's possible and what's not. Science has told us what's real and what's not. So since we know, we can't say anything outside of what science has told us is acceptable. And so maybe that's why we haven't had, and these things, we don't see things, in these past, at least not in the mainstream. It doesn't show up in the mainstream. It is interesting when you start opening your mind and start being a little bit more curious and talking to other people, where they'll go like, well, there was this one time when.
I can speak to my own sort of, probably 6 years ago, my mother-in-law said something like there was a high-pitched whine, which was her air conditioning unit, but she said, that's the aliens. They communicate with me through my air conditioning unit through this high-pitched whine. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. Very dismissive. That sounds like a bunch of BS. Sounds kind of like you're paranoid. To me now, being say 100 degrees, 180, 100% the other direction, where I've had my own experiences intentionally communicating with other sort of entities of consciousness at different levels and actively seeking it, but watching how much evidence I needed to shift my perspective. Like, how many cell phone camera footages of UFOs did I need to see to start to say, okay, it's actually totally, UFOs are totally real, and they're sometimes piloted by humans and sometimes piloted by not humans, right? I had to see quite a bit of actual video footage before I started letting my mind open. And there's a certain, see it to believe it. And I think it does take, for people that have been in a obedient, scientific, rational, linear, capitalistic society, which we all are immersed in.
Yep.
In order to start to take these leaps of belief, take these leaps of logical. It's actually logical for me to stop having linear beliefs. It's actually, it's a total shift. And until you walk down the line with yourself, it's hard to know what that's like.
Yeah, I think we all have our own way to get to learn stuff.
Maybe I'll tell you, it might be an informative story just to talk a little bit more about that. Because
can you hold on? Someone's like knocking at my door. Well, give me just one second. I'll be right. Sorry about that. They were very persistent. So I'm like, who knocks that many times? Okay. Yeah. So I'm ready. I'm ready for this great story.
Oh yeah. Well, and so I was thinking it might help to fill out the story a little bit, which is that when I was living in Portugal, I had dreams every night for 2 months of crop circles. And crop circles are those geometric patterns that appear in the fields, largely in England, but all over the world to some degree. Some in Portugal, some in Germany, some in the US. And sometimes there's animals, sometimes it's sacred geometry, sometimes it's coded messages, very, very rarely that you can sort of translate it into an English message. But I had these dreams every night. And so I said, I gotta research crop circles to find out what's going on. Because I always thought, oh, that's so beautiful. But what is it? Is it a hoax? Because there was these guys in the 70s that said we can make a crop circle with a board. But once you start digging in, you realize there's been 150,000 crop circles created over the last 20 years. Well, these two guys are not creating 150,000 crop circles. And
unless that's a different type of magic that they're doing, right? Like that would be something else. Actually, yeah. So.
And then, you see that these crop circles actually can be read as 2-dimensional pieces of artwork, or sometimes 3-dimensional, or sometimes even 4-dimensional. And there's such nuance. And then there's these videos of them being created over the course of 15 seconds, like an entire 300-foot crop circle. And you see these flying little orbs, and then the whole crop circle just appears in a field. And it's like, what is going on? What technology is this? And that sort of opened the door for me to consider, are crop circles a means of communication from a higher intelligence? Or are they a technology? Is it our future selves sending us messages? Are we time travelers? Is there some other explanation, right? And all kinds of things happen, like the crops in the crop circles grow better for the next 10 years in that one space. People that walk into a crop circle have spontaneous healing of things like arthritis and cancer and all kinds of things. Or it can make people feel nauseous and vomit when you walk into a crop circle. Other things happen. So there's all kinds of weird things just from this one phenomenon. But if you accept that, I don't know, perhaps maybe aliens are making crop circles, then well, where are the aliens, right? So then I started looking at footage of actual sightings and people, you know, let's take one in Miami, for example, that has footage from, a dozen different angles of the same event showing all these different crafts doing different things and traveling that don't correspond to physics, right? It pops in here and it pops over there, and right, it's traveling faster than the speed of light potentially, right? So, that means we have to question our physics, and we have to question how a craft like this could be created or piloted. And there's so many things that once you start being curious and investigating, it opens another door, and there's a lot of answers that come in when you ask the questions. But that's how, me as a trained scientist approaches the magical world.
Yeah. Well, because to me, you're coming from it from the true essence of science, which I feel like in some ways has gotten lost in that there's the science religion in some ways, which is, unless it fits in with what we know and currently can explain with what we know now, let's just talk about what we know right now. Like, it's almost just like, let's not even go any veer to the left or the right or anything. It's just, let's deny anything else, which to me starts to be like a religion thing, where it's just like you almost blindly accept and deny anything outside of it. Because like you said, it's, there's footage of things, there's, documented things, but often it's just like, just ignore it. Like I was listening to your podcast with, it was Dawson Church about, some, quote unquote alternative, more energy based techniques going to like the VA. And I think it was like the psychiatry head was just like, this is all a bunch of garbage, like get the hell out of here. Even though, it's been proven to work. There's scientific studies that show it works. People do these techniques and they feel better. Like, what more do you need than, it works? But because it's outside of what this psychiatrist, trained for, probably did their PhD for 7 years and then interned and all this other stuff. Just like, no, I'm going to close my eyes. But it's like, can't we just look at it and maybe we don't have to have an answer, and just sometimes it works is a good enough.
Yeah. And so just for the listener, for the audience, we're talking about EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping. It's, a lot of people have heard of this. But he basically, he wasn't the inventor, but he was one of the sort of early investigators. And he was like, wow, this can heal PTSD. It, 50% of symptoms that people come to the hospital with, you just do tapping for 5 minutes and the symptoms go away. So it's effective for almost all kinds of things. Yeah. And he said, well, if we're, we're doing a disservice to veterans if we're not teaching them this. And he basically set up a foundation, and he's delivered for free, I think, training to 25,000 or more vets through, and, he's helped them with their PTSD and so many emotional issues that come from, being in combat. And I have a lot of respect for him, just knowing that something works and setting it up. And now, 15 years later, the VA was like, okay, now that you've done the hard work and proven it, we'll use it. Yeah.
It was pretty amazing story, but it's in some ways the over reliance on science ends up doing us a disservice, because it's sort of like that's 15 years wasted. Whereas if this head could have just been open to, all right, well, let me try the technique 5 minutes a day for 1 week. He would have known, he would have felt, hey, this has a benefit, and probably would have tried it on some other, and but because there was the belief this doesn't work, it took 15 years to counteract that belief that this is out of quote unquote science that this person believed in.
And let's just reflect this back to ourselves, because we all have the same blind spots to some degree, where we might be really open-minded in one area, but there might be other areas, perhaps, around me being white in my privilege. Like, I just don't really feel like looking at it. I don't want to go dig in and explore. I'm happy with the status quo because things are working out well for me, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's also totally expected that a human would have that sort of reaction. And that's okay too.
Yeah. It does. it's easily okay on the individual level. It gets a little tougher when it's that individual is responsible for the health and welfare of possibly tens of thousands of people based on their, then it'd be nice if we, I guess, made sure we are educating our leaders or requiring more that they have maybe a system or a belief that they're okay to examine their blind spots and change much more rapidly. I think that would be a better belief that if we could instill in anyone in a leadership position, as opposed to, nope, I'm going to stick with the status quo.
Which means in some way building rewards and incentives for people to be able to reevaluate and admit mistakes, and kind of like what Ray Dalio has done. If you read Principles or see his TED Talk or anything, they've built a system, right? And your system spits out results. So if you're not getting the results you want, look at the system and rejigger the system. But his system rewards people for speaking the truth, speaking what's on their mind, even if it's not popular. It rewards people for having mistakes and then sort of using that as information. And it helps triangulate better decision making. But you have to have a system where people are safe and supported to really take these leaps, to say something that, right, like the whole rest of the room is saying one thing, like you need to be able to say the other thing, and have it be rewarded instead of punished.
That is such an awesome system. Like it's that's the system I would want to implement in my company, type of a thing. Is like, let's get the truth there, and hopefully he can get it in more companies. I don't know if that's happening super fast, but maybe faster than we think.
Interesting was, right, when people come in, you have to train them to tell the truth, or you have to train them to say what's on their mind, or you have to. And some people can't do it, right? Some people want to look out for their own best interest, and they end up getting fired because they can't be as open as the rest of the unit. Yeah.
And then most people do just follow sort of like the rewards punishment system. And, most people are really smart and they figure out, okay, I'll get rewarded if I do this behavior. If I don't do it, I don't get rewarded. And so sometimes it's always interesting. A lot of the sort of marketing speak of systems and companies is one thing, but the behavior never changes because the reward and the incentive structure doesn't change. And people ultimately, they go for the rewards, I think.
And one way for the listener to sort of start bringing this into their lives is, and I do this with my kids, I do it with my friends, instead of praising complimenting your friends or complimenting your children on being good at math or good, or a funny person or whatever it is, praising their own system that led them to that. Like, wow, I see that you've really been practicing your math a lot, and it shows because your competency has really gone up. It's very impressive. Or your friends do something amazing, and you're like, well, I actually acknowledge that you plan this and you put the effort in to make it happen. And, this is an amazing party, or you pulled off an event or something like that. Acknowledging the process and the system that led to that, rather than just saying, you're naturally good at this, great job being tall. Keep up the good work.
I love that, praising the process, not just the result. That's why whenever I would interview, I would always purposely ask a question I knew they couldn't answer, that I knew they would fail, because I wanted to see the process of going through it, how they would work it, maybe what they would try, what they wouldn't try. Because if I, it's like, because I have an electrical engineering background, but I'd interview a computer science person. And so it's like, I know they know nothing about circuits. I'm going to ask them a circuits question and just see how they work through that.
Sneaky.
Yeah. And I don't care if you get it right. It's how do you get the feedback? Some people say like, oh, well, how did you fail at the question? But it's no, how did you deal with the feedback of you don't know, and how do you get information? How do you work with me? And that was always way more valuable than just oh, well, it's 2. The answer is 2. It's like, I don't care. Well, this has been a really good conversation. I don't know if we've gotten how people can, with their consciousness, create a whole new planet. But I think we've gotten some things thinking, and honestly, it doesn't have to be big. Just when we started out with, that just by how you think controls, even just your stress levels, your cortisol, that can have a huge impact. So don't worry about all this other big stuff that we've been talking about. Just start with something simple. And then these big things, they start to steamroll. At least that's what I found.
I will share
yes, please.
Perhaps the best manifestation, law of attraction advice that I have to work with my clients on to train people. Once you sort of figure out what you want, if you want an experience or a thing or a relationship or whatever it is, and kind of how that's going to you want to feel, you want to find your romantic partner, right? And you expect to feel joyful and at ease and full of possibility and all these things, right? So once you sort of have that in mind, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll keep working on it like it's a problem that they got to keep figuring out how to solve. But that's actually just putting on the brakes. So there's that moment when you're in that relationship in the future and you feel the joy and the ease and the thing, everything that you ever wanted, it came true. All you have to do is spend a brief moment there from time to time, just feeling that exact feeling. And what you have to stop doing is trying to find that person or trying to solve that problem or trying to get more money, because that usually is just putting on the brakes, because you're placing your attention back on the thing that you don't have. And so 99% of manifestation or law of attraction can be made much quicker and solved by just stop trying to solve the problem. Yeah,
trust that the subconscious has it, and it's working. It's much faster, much better, and much more parallel than your conscious mind ever is. And so by working hard to make it happen faster is actually distracting your beautiful, beautiful system that is working on your behalf. Well, not just while you're awake, but as you sleep as well, and coming up and helping bring all this stuff in. I love that. That's a great point.
To prove this to myself, once I sort of had that idea, I said, okay, well, let me prove it to myself. Let me run an experiment. So I did not look at my financials for an entire month. I completely stopped thinking about money altogether, except when for every day for 16 days straight, random money showed up in my life, whether it was a new client hiring me for $10,000 or a bank error in your favor, like the Monopoly, you pull a chance card in Monopoly, like, oh, we refunded you $215 just because we made a random error, or a relative calls and is like, I have an extra 15,000. Can I send it to you? Every single day, money was just showing up because I had deliberately just stopped thinking about it. And I was like, okay, sold. I'm sold. Too easy.
Yeah. And that's the most important experiment that matters, is the one for you. Like, that's what I'd like to tell people is like, it doesn't matter what the statistics or like, if something works for you, it works for you. Like, do your own experiment. Like, you could be hearing all the stuff that Derek and I are talking about. Like, that's bullshit, but try it out. Like, heartfelt, put your heart into it, give it a whole go and try it, and then make your decision. I think we got to give ourselves as, we're our own scientists as well, and doing our own experiments. And, that one result for me is what matters. The result for you is what matters. And,
love it.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Derek. I really enjoyed this. I mean, we could probably go like 2 more hours, so we might have to do another episode. So do check out Derek on the Derek Loudermilk podcast, and do check out his book, Superconductors: Revolutionize Your Career and Make Big Things Happen, available on Amazon and Audible. If you have any questions for me about the podcast at justinwink.com. Check me out on social media, and you remember to subscribe, and good day. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.